Today we are going to recap the classic film, Carlito's Way, directed by Brian De Palma, starring Al Pacino, where a Puerto Rican ex-con, just released from prison, pledges to stay away from drugs and violence, and start a better life outside the ghetto. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. The film begins in a courtroom, where Carlito, a drug dealer and assassin, is vindicated of his crimes, and released from prison on a technicality, thanks to the help of his close friend and lawyer, Dave Kleinfeld. After a rousing speech, where Carlito humiliates the prosecutor and judge, Carlito leaves the courtroom a free man, and advises Dave that he intends to fly straight, leaving the criminal life behind. In the evening, Dave and Carlito go to a nightclub to celebrate, and after a few drinks, Carlito reveals his plan to leave New York and work a normal 9-to-5 job, which amuses Dave. The next day, Carlito visits his old neighborhood. He runs into Pachanga, a friend and fellow gangster, who runs down a laundry list of their friends who have either died or been sent to prison. He also sees Humberto, a gangster, who informs him that the local boss wants to see Carlito. Carlito goes to meet the boss, who is happy to see him, thanking him for not snitching and asking who he works for. But Carlito advises him that he has left the criminal life behind, shocking him, as Carlito is a local legend. We then see Carlito in the car with his cousin, Guajiro, who tells him he's become a delivery boy for a local drug dealer, and asks Carlito to accompany him on a big drug deal, which he reluctantly agrees to. He arrives at the deal, introduced by his cousin, and is suspicious of the gang, but plays it cool, keeping an eye on the drug dealers, while waiting for the money to be counted. He asks to use the bathroom, but is stopped, further increasing his suspicions, so he starts to play pool instead and begins setting up the game. Meanwhile, Guajiro is offered a beer by the drug dealer, but while reaching into the cooler, a thug comes out of the bathroom brandishing a knife, which Carlito sees in a reflection, and instantly reacts, hitting the thug with a pool cue, and ends up having to shoot his way out, failing to save his cousin. Once the dust settles, he flees from the scene, taking the money from the deal, and disposing of the gun. Carlito then visits Dave, advising him that he wishes to invest in a local nightclub, so Dave sets up the deal, but asks Carlito if he can organize a bodyguard for him. Carlito asks why Dave needs a bodyguard, which Dave brushes off, but won't reveal anymore. We then cut to the nightclub, where Carlito meets Sarso, the club owner, and buys a piece of the club. We then see Carlito running the club, and Pachanga is now his bodyguard, helping him with security. Carlito is then approached by a waiter, who advises him that someone isn't paying their bill, so Carlito approaches the table. The man is Benny Blanco, a young hustler, who is honored to meet Carlito, agreeing to pay the bill, and offering him a drink, which he refuses. Benny tries to gain favor by flattering Carlito, and attempts to organize a deal with Carlito, but Carlito again refuses, leaving the table. Later that night, Carlito is running through the rain, and sees his ex-girlfriend, Gail, dancing ballet. He approaches her when she leaves, and she is happy to see him, as he has been in prison for years, so they decide to have coffee, and restart their relationship. Meanwhile, Dave is having a meeting with one of his clients, Tony T, who is in prison. It is then revealed that Dave stole $1 million from the mobster, which should have been used to make a payoff, but he decided to keep the money. He gives Dave an ultimatum: help him break out of prison, or have a mob hit put out on him. Dave leaves the prison, and gets sick, realizing that he has no choice but to help Tony T, risking his career. We then cut back to the club, where Carlito is visited by an old friend, Liline. Liline used to be a greeter at another nightclub, but is now in a wheelchair. He says that he beat a 30-year prison sentence, but can't explain how, which triggers Carlito's interest. He then tries to organize a drug deal, but Carlito refuses, realizing that he's wearing a wire. Carlito controls his anger, telling Liline that he's not going to kill him, and leaves the room. Later that evening, Dave is dancing at the nightclub with a girl, Steffi, and they head to the bathroom for some fun, when Benny Blanco enters the room. Blanco wants to see Steffi, but she leaves the bathroom and sits at Carlito's table with Dave, so Benny sends over a bottle of champagne to Carlito's table. Again, Carlito refuses, and Benny grows frustrated with Carlito's rejection of the bottle, and Dave sparking a love interest with Steffi. Benny approaches the table and questions Carlito on why he continues to reject him, so Carlito tells Benny what he thinks of him, that he's a small-time crook. After Carlito tells Benny what he thinks of him, Benny manhandles Steffi, spurring Dave to pull out a gun in Benny's face and threaten to kill him on the spot, causing chaos. Carlito is forced to take action, so with the help of Pachanga, takes Benny out the back where Pachanga and another bouncer beat him up. Carlito threatens to kill Benny if he is seen in the club again, and then orders Pachanga to let him go, as Carlito has rejected the violence of his youth. Carlito returns to the office, where Dave asks about what happened with Benny. Carlito then asks Dave to give him his gun as he's not a tough guy, so Dave obliges, and invites Carlito to a party at his house the following day. We then see the party, and it is clear that Dave is highly successful, as he has a beautiful home, and is very influential. During the party, Dave approaches Carlito, and asks him to help with busting Tony T out of prison. Carlito refuses, but after David explains the situation, revealing that he will be killed, he reluctantly agrees. The next day, Carlito meets with Gail at the club, enjoying a dance together. Carlito then allows another man to dance with Gail, and Dave, who is growing more erratic, taunts the man, almost causing a fight, before it is defused by Carlito. While at the table, Dave reveals information about the boat trip, angering Gail, who leaves the table, so Carlito warns him to keep his mouth shut about the job. Later, back at Gail's place, the two have an argument about his involvement in Dave's scheme, and Gail believes he has lied about wanting to leave the criminal life. Carlito assures Gail that this is the last thing he needs to do, which Gail doesn't accept, so Carlito leaves. We then cut to Dave's house, as the time for the boat trip has arrived, and Carlito and Dave meet Frankie, Tony's son, who is accompanying them on the job. They take the boat out, and find Tony T clinging to the buoy, but while approaching Tony, Dave asks Carlito to take the wheel, and kills Tony. Carlito realizes the severity of the situation and watches as Dave drags Frankie's body off the boat, before the boat leaves. After returning to Dave's house, the two argue over what has occurred, and Carlito asks if Dave really ripped off Tony T, which he admits, so Carlito tells him that they're even, and leaves the house. Later that day, we see Carlito at the club, reflecting on his current situation, when he is approached by Sarso. Sarso tells him that he's seen Pachanga talking to Benny Blanco, and suspects that Pachanga plans to double-cross him, but Carlito brushes it off. We then cut to Dave's office, where Dave receives a call from a police officer, advising that his car has been damaged, so he leaves. While waiting for the elevator, however, he spots a suspicious character, and is attacked by Tony's goons, who stab him in the chest. Meanwhile, Carlito is talking to Gail, trying to persuade her that he has left the criminal life behind, and him and Dave are done. Gail then reveals that she is pregnant, when the police surround Carlito, and ask him to accompany them to the district attorney's office, so Carlito agrees. At the DA's office, it is revealed that Dave is wanted by the Mafia, and play him a recording of Dave snitching on Carlito, trying to frame Carlito for a reduced sentence. The DA then tells Carlito that they know about his involvement in the boat trip, which Carlito denies, but the DA offers him immunity for his testimony against Dave, telling him that they can place him in the witness protection program, but Carlito again denies any involvement. We then see Carlito and Gail in a cab, and Gail is trying to persuade him to take the deal, but Carlito convinces her to leave the country with him, and meet him at a train bound for Miami later that day. Carlito then goes to the hospital to learn the truth from Dave. On the way in, he notices a suspicious man dressed as a police officer, and is searched before entering the room. Dave admits to selling out Carlito, so Carlito pretends to help Dave with his gun, telling him he has a great future ahead, and leaves. We then see the suspicious police officer entering Dave's room, and after entering, he pulls out a gun, so Dave tries to shoot, but it is revealed that Carlito has unloaded his gun, and Dave is killed. Carlito then goes to the club to pick up his money, but some Mafia men are there, and they ask Carlito for a drink, trying to feel him out, suspecting he is responsible for Tony's death. Carlito leaves the table, and heads up to his office to retrieve his money, but finds out the money is gone, so he grabs a knife and a gun from his desk, and goes to find Sarso, who admits that he took the money, and it's near the register. Carlito tries to retrieve his money, but is introduced to Vinny, Tony's son. A waiter brings over champagne, and Carlito uses it as an excuse to leave, saying it's a cheap bottle. Carlito then grabs the money from the bar, and the Mafia men become impatient, before Vinny approaches the bar, and discovers that Carlito has escaped the club. They exit the club and see Carlito running and decide to run after him. A wild chase ensues, where the Italians pursue him throughout the city subway system, and into Grand Central Station, where the train Carlito and Gale will be taking is waiting. Carlito almost manages to lose the Italians, when one of them spots him, and a shootout occurs. Carlito leaves the scene and finally sees Gale, but after they meet, he is met by Benny Blanco, who shoots him with a silenced pistol. Pachanga admits to be working with Blanco to set Carlito up, to look out for his own future, just before he himself is shot by Blanco. A dying Carlito hands Gale the money, and tells her to escape with their unborn child, and live a new life elsewhere. The film ends with Carlito being wheeled away on a gurney, as he stares at a billboard with a Caribbean beach, and a dancing woman frozen in shot. He thinks about his wishes for Gale to get out, and his own death. The billboard comes to life and the woman, who is Gale, starts dancing as he slowly closes his eyes. Carlito's Way is highly regarded as one of the top 100 crime films of all time, and is based on a 1975 American crime novel of the same name, written by Edwin Torres. Sean Penn and Penelope Ann Miller both received Golden Globe nominations for their respective roles as Dave and Gale, and the later appreciation of the film was highlighted when the French publication Cahiers du Cinéma named it as one of the 3 best films of the 1990s. Thank you for watching this video. If you've enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe. Have a fantastic day.